Sabr is not hard because you are weak. Sabr is hard because what you are carrying is heavy, and Allah sees every tear you never showed anyone. Sabr is one of the most repeated commands in the Quran. Yet, it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many people think Sabr means staying silent, pretending you are strong, or forcing a smile while your heart is breaking. But Sabr is not about denying pain. Sabr is about holding on to Allah while the pain exists. That is why Sabr is hard. If it were easy, it would not be rewarded without measure. There are moments in life when you do everything right, yet everything still feels wrong. You pray, you make dua, you try to stay positive, but the test does not leave. In those moments, Shaitan whispers, if Allah loved you, this wouldn't be happening. But this is where the true test of Sabr begins. Because Sabr is not proven when life is calm. Sabr is proven when you are exhausted, confused, and still choosing Allah. Allah never promised us a life without pain. He promised us that pain would not be wasted. Every delay, every heartbreak, every unanswered dua is either protecting you, preparing you, or elevating you. What makes Sabr heavy is that we want immediate relief, while Allah is working on an eternal plan. And when you understand this, Sabr slowly changes from frustration into trust. The Prophet faced loss, rejection, hunger, betrayal, and grief, yet his heart remained connected to Allah. Not because he did not feel pain, but because he knew pain does not mean abandonment. It often means closeness. When Allah tests you, it is because He wants to raise you to a level you could not reach without that test. Sabr does not mean you stop making dua. It means you keep making dua even when you feel tired. It does not mean you stop feeling sadness. It means sadness does not push you away from Allah. And this is what will help you. Realizing that Sabr is not something you do alone. Allah Himself is with those who are patient. Sabr becomes easier when you understand the purpose of the test. One of the deepest reasons Sabr feels so heavy on the heart is because in the moment of hardship, we often see only the pain and not the wisdom behind it. When a person is tested, the mind naturally asks questions. Why is this happening? Why now? Why me? These questions arise because the human heart craves clarity and immediate relief. But Allah, in His infinite wisdom, does not always reveal the reason for a test at the time it occurs. Instead, He asks the believer to trust Him before the answer becomes visible. This is where Sabr truly begins, not when things make sense, but when they do not. And you still choose to rely on Allah as a purpose changes the entire experience of hardship. Allah does nothing randomly or without wisdom. Every difficulty, delay, loss, and disappointment is part of a divine plan that is far more precise than our limited understanding. Sometimes Allah tests you to purify your heart, removing pride, attachment to the dunya, or reliance on people instead of Him. At other times, the test comes to strengthen your iman, because the level Allah wants to raise you to cannot be reached without struggle. Ease does not always build faith, but hardship often does. Many people assume that if Allah loved them, He would remove their pain immediately. In reality, Allah often tests those He loves the most. Not to harm them, but to draw them closer. A test forces you to turn inward, to reflect, to make sincere dua, and to seek Allah with a depth you may never have reached during comfort. When life is easy, hearts can become distracted. But when life becomes difficult, the heart naturally returns to its Creator. In this way, hardship becomes a door back to Allah, not a sign of distance from Him. Sabr becomes easier when you realize that your test may be protecting you from something worse. What you are asking for might have harmed you, weakened your faith, or pulled you away from Allah. The delay you hate today may be the mercy you thank Allah for tomorrow. Many believers look back on painful chapters of their lives and later realize that those moments saved them, redirected them, or reshaped them into better versions of themselves. Allah sees outcomes you cannot see, and He plans with a knowledge that includes your future, your akhirah, and your eternal success. When you shift your mindset from a why, is this happening to me, to what is Allah teaching me through this, Sabr no longer feels pointless. The pain is still there, but it gains meaning. And pain with meaning is easier to endure than pain that feels random. You begin to understand that this test is not meant to break you, but to build you, cleanse you, and elevate you. In that realization, Sabr slowly transforms from a burden into an act of trust that Allah knows, Allah sees, and Allah is guiding every step. Even when the road is difficult, Sabr grows when you stop carrying the burden alone. One of the greatest misunderstandings about Sabr is the belief that it means enduring hardship silently and independently, as if asking for help or expressing pain somehow weakens faith. In reality, Sabr was never meant to be a lonely struggle. Allah did not command Sabr and then leave the believer to face hardship on their own. Instead, He reassured us with a powerful promise that He is with those who are patient. This means that true Sabr begins when a person stops relying solely on their own emotional strength and starts leaning fully on Allah. Many people exhaust themselves trying to remain strong through willpower alone. They suppress their emotions, hide their tears, and tell themselves they must endure quietly. Over time, this approach makes Sabr feel unbearable. Islam, however, does not teach emotional denial. It teaches emotional direction. You are allowed to feel pain, sadness, fear, and exhaustion. What matters is where you take those feelings. When you carry your pain to Allah in dua, sujood, and sincere conversation, Sabr becomes a shared burden rather than a solitary one. The Quran and the lives of the prophets show us that turning to Allah in moments of weakness is not a lack of faith. It is a sign of deep faith. Expressed his grief openly to Allah during his hardest moments, turned to Allah with heartfelt supplication. They did not hide their pain from Allah. They entrusted it to Him. This teaches us that Sabr is not about being unbreakable, but about knowing where to turn when you feel broken. When you consistently connect with Allah through prayer, Sabr transforms into worship. Each moment of patience becomes an act of obedience. Each tear shed in private becomes a form of dua. Each delay becomes an opportunity to strengthen your relationship with Allah. The hardship may remain, but your heart becomes lighter because you are no longer carrying it alone. You begin to feel supported, heard, and understood by the one who knows your pain even before you put it into words. Sabr also grows when you remember that Allah's help often comes through unseen ways. Sometimes it arrives as inner calm, sometimes as clarity, and sometimes as the strength to keep going even when nothing around you changes. When you rely on Allah, you may not see immediate solutions, but you gain resilience. You develop a sense of peace that is not dependent on circumstances, but on trust in Allah's presence. Ultimately, Sabr becomes sustainable when you stop treating hardship as something you must survive by yourself. The moment you turn fully to Allah, Sabr shifts from silent suffering into a living connection with your Creator. And when you feel Allah with you in your hardship, patience no longer feels like abandonment. It feels like being held through the storm, guided step by step, until relief comes in the way. Allah knows His best that Sabr is temporary, but its reward is eternal. One of the most powerful truths that helps a believer remain patient during hardship is the understanding that Sabr is not forever, but its reward is. Difficulty and trials all belong to this temporary world, and nothing in the dunya lasts permanently, not ease and not hardship. When a person is in the middle of a test, it often feels endless, as if the situation will never change. But Islam teaches us that every hardship has a limit set by Allah. No night is without a dawn, and no trial continues beyond what the heart can bear, even if it feels overwhelming in the moment. What gives Sabr its true strength is knowing that Allah is recording every moment of patience, even the moments no one else sees. The sleepless nights, the silent tears, the suppressed frustration, and the continued obedience despite exhaustion are all being counted. Allah promises that the reward of Sabr is given without measure, meaning it is beyond human calculation or imagination. On the Day of Judgment, when the believer sees the scale of reward for their patience, they will realize that not a single moment of endurance was wasted. This understanding changes how a believer views suffering. Instead of seeing hardship as meaningless pain, Sabr allows a person to see it as an investment for the hereafter. Every time you choose patience over despair, trust over complaint, and prayer over hopelessness, you are storing reward that will remain with you eternally. The test may pass, but what you earn through it stays forever. This is why scholars often say that Sabr into gain and pain into elevation. Allah's mercy also appears in the way He sometimes rewards Sabr even before the hereafter. Many believers find that through patience, their hearts become stronger, their faith deeper, and their perspective clearer. They emerge from hardship with a closeness to Allah that they never experienced during ease. The trial that once felt unbearable becomes a turning point that reshaped their relationship with their Creator Most importantly, Sabr teaches the believer where true permanence lies. This world is temporary, its struggles are temporary, and even its happiness is temporary. But Allah, His pleasure and His reward are eternal. When a believer holds on to this reality, patience becomes more than endurance, it becomes hope. Hope that Allah's promise is true. Hope that relief will come at the right time. And hope that every step taken with patience is leading toward eternal peace. Sabr is difficult, but it is never meaningless. If Allah asks you to be patient, it is because what He is preparing for you is far greater than what you are currently enduring. Hold on because the pain will end, but the reward will remain forever.